In this week's episode, I'll be fitting a vanity unit to my Narrowboat's bathroom and attempt to drill through the hull.
The sink came with a standard domestic drain kit. It has the plug hole, goes through to a junction where the overflow would come through from the top, goes down through 32mm, down into a U-bend and then off into connectors into a normal domestic system. Now, water from sinks, both from the kitchen and also bathrooms, that's called grey water, and that goes through a pipe, through a fitting in the hull and straight out into the canal. You use sort of eco-friendly soap and that sort of thing, but because there's no sewage in it, it's not going to harm the canal or the wildlife in the canal. It's usually connected to a fitting like this, which is a hole is drilled through the hull of the boat, and then that's bolted on, and then you have a connector coming off that, which then goes onto a pipe like this. This is a half-inch pipe, but boy, did I have a problem of finding 32mm to half-inch pipe. I couldn't find anything anywhere. There are things online where you can go from a plug hole to a pipe directly, but I wanted to keep the facility of the overflow of the actual sink. The other issue you have is the height of the hole versus the water level. Obviously you can't drill a hole below the water level, and guidelines indicate that you have to have a minimum of around about 10 inches between the waterline and the hole on the side of the boat. That's because of when boats go past, or waves when you're in choppier water. It's not like a sailing boat, it's nothing that sort of resistance, but it does need to have that height allowance. Now that also has added problems, because already with this sort of thing I've lost what are effectively 5 inches, and so that eats into my allowance effectively. And you can't have a sink right up here. So I wanted to try and get my outflow, effectively this pipe, as high as possible. And I couldn't find anything for 32mm, and this was 32mm, so I thought, right. However, on this side, I've got like a plug that plugs a hole, so you can see my finger there, and I thought, I wonder if I could connect this sort of pipe to that instead of using the 32mm. And I scratched my head. I went to Midland Chandlery in Willington, who were really helpful. We went through lots and lots of different combinations, and I came back with this combination. So instead of the half-inch pipe, I've gone with an inch pipe, and that fits nice and snug onto there. I'll have a Jubilee clip on here which will seal it, and then that will just go straight out of the hull. But I still had this hole here, so if I get rid of this, haven't made the job easier, have I? Now I've got a 32mm hole to plug, and I scratched my head again, and I found this. This is just an access plug, but all I was interested in this little fitting was this end, and that screws onto the bottom of the 32mm. It's got a black washer in, so it's nice and tight. So now I've lost 4 or 5 inches of height, and I can come out of that pipe hole straight out of the hull.
The first thing I did was build the vanity unit. I wanted something that would go to the floor to maximise the amount of storage beneath it. The unit has 2 drawers, is 600mm wide, and the sink is glued to its top. The porcelain sink has a single hole for the mixer tap, and I bolted this in place. The tails of the hot and cold pipes have half-inch connectors, and I use 15mm plastic speed fit throughout the boat, so I fitted 15mm to half-inch converters. Despite the drain kit having a black washer, knowing from past experience they often leak, so I applied a bead of silicone around the areas below and above the washer to ensure no water escapes. I then screwed the plug hole to the drain kit and fitted the sink to the top of the vanity unit. I measured many times where the level of the waste pipe could flow out through the hull. As I had no U-bend, I was able to have my whole hole at around 13 to 14 inches above the waterline. I cut a small section of the foam away from the hole's side and started to drill my hole. The hole at this point is 6mm thick steel, and I took it slow and applied plenty of oil to lubricate the cut and reduce heat. I then ran into problems. The arbor of the first hole drill went through the hull fine, but quickly blunted my hole saw. It then blunted a second brand new hole saw and a third more expensive one. Finally, the fourth and the second Bosch Cobalt hole saw got through, and I applied a small amount of paint to the cut to avoid future rust issues. The hole is on the canal side of Alice, and I didn't want to drop the fitting into the canal. I formed a loop of wire through the hole and up through a porthole. I slid the hull skin fitting down the wire and used an old chisel to align the fitting through the hull. It's at this point you could guarantee it would fall out and into the canal, never to be seen again. But the wire trick seemed to solve this problem. I applied a small amount of silicone sealant on the inside of the hole and fitted the skin fittings washer and nut. I slid the 1-inch braided hose onto the skin fitting and tightened it using a hose Jubilee clip. I've temporarily placed the sink unit in place and cut a hole in the side for waste pipe and also at the base for water pipes. I detailed in episode 20 how I'd created bilge access holes at various points around the boat. One of those points is here, right under the sink, for easy out-of-sight access. I lined up the braided hose to the sink's drain and cut the hose. Again, I tightened the hose with a Jubilee clip. I connected the hot and cold water supply, filled the sink to overflow and checked for leaks. I then let the sink drain and was happy with the flow of water down through the drain unit, out through the hose and out through the hull. Finally, no more cleaning my teeth in the kitchen sink.